So guys, what trailers did they run today before the main features? So we started off with the Suicide Squad. It's the PG-13 trailer. So the moment where they're all sat in the auditorium and Idris Elba says, he's meant to say the F-bomb, but he drops it, we're all going to die. They had that. Then they had G.I. Joe.
Snake Eyes.
And that was great to see on the big screen. And then finally, No Time to Die, James Bond. Now at the very end of that trailer, I don't recall seeing it on the internet release, but it might have been something I missed, but some action sequences were shot in IMAX. So when it comes to my precious money being saved for that event movie, it's going to be Mr. Bond and Daniel Craig in his last outing as the suave, sophisticated British agent. Now, first of all, I want to say if you haven't seen this film yet, I'm going to be dropping some very mild plot spoilers, so steer clear if you don't want to hear what those are. Make sure you watch this film first, whether it's on Disney Plus or at the cinema or by any other means necessary. By all means, do whatever you can. All I'll say is I'm glad I didn't pay more than £10 for my ticket today, because if I went to the IMAX and spent over £22 for this experience, I would have been asking for a refund. It is a shame that I've got to say, but also Black Widow, although it's the 24th movie in that illustrious franchise, it doesn't feel like a Marvel film. It's a spy film that is not a superhero film, because, yeah, Natasha Romanoff, like Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, they don't have superpowers. So why this is called a superhero film, I'm a little bit unsure of. Now, this kind of reminds me of something about Ike Perlmutter back in 2015. He was the guy that was kind of running the show on the Marvel Studios output, and he and Kevin Feige were at loggerheads with each other because Perlmutter said there's no way that a female-led superhero film can be a hit for their stable, and that almost caused Feige to walk out. But I got to say, after watching this film today, Perlmutter may have had a point. There are some good things about it, but there are many bad things about it too. So obviously the plus points are the main leads. Rachel Weisz is good, although a bit underused. David Harbour has a lot of fun as Red Guardian. He's hilarious as Alexei. Scarlett Johansson, yeah, she's good. She looks kind of batter-worn and beaten. Like, you know, it's almost as like she's saying, I'm playing this part yet again. Oh dear God, help me. That's what it comes across as. But Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, fantastic. She keeps her Russian accent all the way through the movie, as does David Harbour and Rachel Weisz. Pugh just has the most fun. She's got some great moments of action. But there's one moment where she delivers a line of dialogue about female sterilization to David Harbour. Now, if you're eating in the moment, guys, like at the cinema, and that dialogue comes up, probably better stop eating until that moment clears, because it's pretty graphic and it didn't make anybody in the audience laugh that I was with. So that would tell you something. I can actually see why Disney wanted to release this straight on their platform and not on the cinemas. To me, you should just watch this film on your TV set at home, whether you've got a nice OLED 65-incher, then by all means do that. But if you really want to get to the cinema, I thought I was going to have a really good time at this. Now, there is an action scene in the first 30 minutes of the movie where Yelena is waiting for her sister, Natasha, to come home in inverted commas. They have these big fights in the kitchen all over the place, but the sound is so loud, like with the crashing and the thumping. You didn't need that. Now, Christopher Nolan's Tenet had the same criticism for the sound being pumped up too much. But in that case, I'll defend that movie, because the scene they're talking about, it was different. They were using gunshots. But here, it's two women fighting each other. So all the crash bang wallops, whoever was on the editing suite, they needed to tone down the sound of the machine, of the sound effects. It was just way, way too much. And I was in the super screen theater, so imagine how loud that was. Now, Kate Shortland, She's the director that was chosen by ScarJo to direct this movie. Kate Shortland, if you look at her CV on IMDb, it's mainly comprised of dramas. The only action film that I can see that she's directed is a film called The Silence from 2006, starring Richard Roxburgh, who's a fantastic South African actor. He was the main baddie, or one of the main baddies in Mission Impossible 2 with Tom Cruise. He also played Sherlock Holmes in The Hound of the Baskervilles for the BBC, a really good production. If you haven't seen it, worth watching. So the action in this film really lets it down. For one thing, it's kind of shot in sort of like low grain resolution. So it's not that high def, that 4K experience you're hoping for. It's none of that whatsoever. And I will say as well that there's a caveat, okay? If you're shooting action scenes at nighttime, it means you're masking the fact that your lead actors, cannot do action confidently. Also, if you're having bad editing in a film, that also hides the imperfections of the actors to make them look better. There are several moments in this film where you can see there's a stunt person in place of the actor, which kind of took away the experience for me a little bit. And there's so much chopping and changing with the action. I really just lost sight of what was going on in the end. Now, I'm speaking as an action aficionado. I believe I can call myself that because I watch tons of action movies for a very, very long time now. In fact, one of my very good friends, Vagabond star JXF, me and him will sit down for hours watching martial arts films, your conventional Hollywood action films, just comparing apples to pears, what makes the Asian contingency much better than what Hollywood can do. And it's really fascinating. And even to this day, even like after watching this film, I can point at so many flaws. Now, you can approach this film in one or two ways. If you want to see a female-led driven story, you've got that in spades. If you want to see a kick-ass action movie, you're not going to get it. I mean, scenes where you got obviously CGI flames and Scarlett Johansson jumping through a window, which is obviously CGI'd as well. It looks really, really terrible. There's a lot of references or heavy referencing to James Bond in this film. And I know that Scarlett Johansson came out with a very curious line of dialogue a couple of days ago where she was mentioning the fact that she felt like a chess piece in Marvel's MCU because she was this sexualized character. But then she is playing a sexualized character in the comics, who is a female James Bond. That's what Stan Lee wanted for his comics and then over into his films. Kate Shortland says they've kind of sorted out that issue with the sexualization of female characters in this film, but I don't think they have really. If you're a male or a female and you admire the female form, you can admire it here. They've done nothing to qualm those fears. It's pretty much prevalent. It's in your face. So that's misguided messaging, in my opinion. I don't think it really sits well. In fact, again, something I've got to bring up that my friend mentioned was that the way they marketed this film is that they rammed so much TV spots and trailers at you. You really feel exhausted. Apparently, there's a featurette online where it kind of reveals how the third act of the film ends. Now, I haven't seen that, so I don't know how true that actually is. But I will say, going back to the James Bond reference as well, there's a moment in this film where Romanov is sitting down watching Moonraker and reciting Roger Moore's dialogues. I can't really recommend this film to you. It feels like it wants to be a Jason Bourne film, a Jack Bauer TV show, 24, or Mission Impossible. Now, if you want to see a spy series on film done right, Mission Impossible, those films are great, with the exception of Mission Impossible 2. It wasn't really a spy film. It was more of a revenge thriller, but the rest are fantastic. And they've kind of gotten stronger with each entry. But then you got Tom Cruise, you got Christopher McQuarrie. They take the source material really, really seriously. I like how they've updated it, and it's awesome. But Black Widow, it doesn't come anywhere near the greatness of that franchise. It really doesn't. To me, Black Widow doesn't even feel like an MCU film at all. You're kind of left asking the question, a bit like the Han Solo story, the Solo movie from, 2016 or whatever, it was 2017? Nobody asked for it. People did ask for this particular Solo film from Black Widow, but it's too late. They're even hinting at a sequel. I don't think he can really do a sequel. Taskmaster, very, very poor use of that villain. They could have brought him into Iron Man 2. So by the time we get to this film, you'd understand there's more of a grudge match going on between him and Natasha. But the way Taskmaster's utilized here, is not true to the comic book form where he can memorize moves and then use those moves against whoever he's fighting. The only time you see it is with Hawkeye, and then that's it. There's no other time. So guys, I just wanted to go into this article here, courtesy of CBR.com, with Victoria Alonso, one of the Marvel producers. She came up with a very strange quote. I'm not sure how much I agree with that, or it's kind of like she didn't really do her homework. So I mentioned before that females can't sell a standalone superhero film. But what I find a little bit, I'm going to contest this one. So despite the popularity of women-led franchises like The Hunger Games during the 2010s, now The Hunger Games is basically a Hollywood ripoff of Battle Royale from Japan. If you haven't seen that film, I suggest you watch that instead, because that's far, far superior to The Hunger Games, which I didn't care for. And quite clearly with the declining popularity of Jennifer Lawrence, nobody cared about those either. But yeah, I would say about this as well, if you're talking about iconic female-led movies, then I think about Sarah Connor from the first Terminator movies, and then obviously Ellen Ripley from the Aliens films, because the stories and plots of those movies drove those characters to become iconic. It wasn't the other way around, where they are relied upon to drive those films. And that's the problem I think Marvel currently finds itself in. It just doesn't know what to do. Since the passing of Stan Lee, I think because he's now out of the scene, that Marvel now have to readdress going forward what their MCU is going to look like. Now, if you're going to buy this film, maybe you're a completionist. I certainly am not when it comes to this sort of thing. But for me, the special effects in this film, there's too much use of CGI. I was saying to a friend of mine today, we're having this really cool conversation about how much I miss the hokey special effects in the 80s and the 90s films, and maybe even the early 2000s too. It was just at that stage where CGI hadn't become sophisticated like it is now. And because we have that at our disposal, it means anything goes and we won't fuss about it. But yeah, that post-credit scene at the, right at the very end, guys, to me, it's a big waste of time. You're sat there for 6 minutes, the end credits can't roll fast enough, and then you get this really anticlimactic post-credit scene, and I'm like, oh my God, really? And you're just left thinking, it's almost a punch in the nads, really. It feels like that. It's terrible. I think really there's going to be a half of the demographic audience who are going to love this film, and then you're going to the other half who completely despise it. I understand the message it was going for, but quite clearly you can see who they're really aiming the message towards. And that's where I think is going to be problematic for the movie going forward. So guys, that was my quick review for Black Widow, finally out on the cinemas. Really, it should have been a streaming platform service only and not being paywalled by Disney to cough up so many extra pounds to watch it. That's why I'm kind of glad I've left them now. So guys, if you like this review, give it a big thumbs up. You'll be helping me and the algorithm out, and I'll catch you on my next review tomorrow.